Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about floodgates. Floodgates are just horrendous, let's say, and the worst offenders are honestly cards like Rivalry, Skill Drain, so all of the simple one card like floodgates that if your deck interacts with them in a bad way, for example, let's say you're playing Therion, then you wouldn't be able to control uh, the same type of monster, right? Because all your Therions are different. So these ones are actually somewhat in the like not as bad category, but when you start combining floodgates like skill drain and then rivalry together with there can be only one, then you're left with like absolutely no options. Tikaboo still being at 2. The only option like you have if you're facing this stuff is if you simply open the out. Like in some cases it can be like a Harpy's Feather Duster, it can be evenly matched, and that's like alright, you know, if you draw the out you win, but there's literally no interaction to be made whatsoever. It's simply, oh, I have the out, or oh, I guess I don't have like the out. In this case, Feather Duster can also just not be the out because of cards like this. Hugin the Runic Wings. This banishes itself to protect any cards that would be destroyed by card effects. So in this case, it could be Rivalry, Skill Drain, whatever. And does this do it for cost? No, so it doesn't protect Skill Drain, at least. But it will still protect, like, there can be only one, Rivalry of Warlords. And of course, there's, like, stuff that's fairly obnoxious, like normal summon Inspector Border. If you normal summon Inspector Border, of course, you have, like, 2 ways, well, 3 ways, actually, around that many to out Inspector Border. I guess Super Poly can kind of do it if you happen to have, like, something you can normal summon to get rid of Inspector Border with. Then, you might have something going for you, I suppose. But in general, just think of, like, normal summon Inspector Border, and then you need, like, a 2k monster that you can, like, normal or special summon. That or something higher, like Alpha Master of Beasts, to attack into Inspector Border. And that's still hoping that they didn't have Moon Mirror Shield, which if they do, then that's no longer an option, and then your only option is to like have a Kaiju in your deck and to simply have it in hand, or drop a Raigeki, drop an evenly match, that kind of thing. That's about all you can really do. You just need some kind of spell trap removal to remove Inspector Border. But here's the thing, your opponent, even if they just normal summon Inspector Border, that is 1 out of 5 of their hand cards, and they could have still have been playing like Desires and Extrav, which they would likely be playing because they don't have to run an extra deck for this kind of degenerate strategy. So if you normal summon Inspector Border, chances are you still have 5 cards unaccounted for, likely like of the spell trap variety. Most likely more floodgates like this. And then you have cards like Lord of the Heavenly Prison, which is pretty gross for the same kind of reasons. And this is like even worse because like for example, like with Kairushin, like Labyrinth right now isn't as bad of an offender as this, honestly. How do I spell this? Kairushin. Alright. Ocean Dragon Lord Kairushin. With Kairushin, like this entire Umi stun deck is revolting to go against going second, because immediately your options are much more limited. This is actually worse than Inspector Border, and I believe it's like a 2-card combo. So it's just not much better in like a sort of sense. I think, yeah, this is just completely degenerate. There's no real other way to put it, yeah. So, with this fun deck of, uh, basically, basically Kairyu stun, if you're not playing a water deck, you can't play. That's basically what this amounts to, and there's a bunch of different things this deck does that's really obnoxious. So, first off, you can now only control one face-up non-water monster, which is basically you're getting Tikabooed here. So you can only more or less ever control one monster at a time, unless you also happen to be playing water monsters. And even if you're playing water monsters, like a few, you'd have to be able to, like, let's say you want to make a Link 2, that Link 2 would have to be a water monster, or you can't even go into that because technically, like, you can't link off two monsters if you control uh, more than, well, if you control one non-water. If you controlled, like, two waters, you could link them off into, like, an earth monster. That would be okay. But, like, in general, absolutely dumb. In fact, like, let's just go and look at what water decks there are real fast. Let's go effect monster, and then let's actually, just to narrow it down a bit more, let's go URSR. So we have Goatee. And then Tearlament doesn't count because all they have is Rhino, so you won't be able to actually, like, summon much. I guess you can go, like, kick Kalos, and then nothing. That's it. Supreme Seamare, nothing. Nothing. Crystron, who plays Crystron? Marincess, you can kinda do Marincess. Sword Soul, you can make exactly Chizao. And then that's about it. Let's see. Aside from Marincess, water deck. Yeah, there's not much else aside from Marincess, actually. Yeah, if you're not playing exactly like Marincess, you're kind of not going to be resolving anything. I guess there's, like, sharks and stuff like that, but, like, for the most part, it's just Goatee Marincess, I guess. And if you play Crystron, they're all water machines, right? Yeah. Okay. So aside from, like, exactly this, you're just going to get floodgated and you can't play the game. And normally you might be thinking, ah, yes, draw that out, right? But then you realize, like, technically, if you control no monsters, any kaiju does it, so you would need to open a kaiju, assuming you're playing kaijus, of course. Or you have the option of evenly matched, and those are about your only two options for outs going second into this, unless your deck happens to have, like, a decent matchup into this. Like, maybe Valence has enough waters, I don't know. They're water fire here. But, like, well, actually, wait, if you're playing Valence, you can actually activate the field spell to replace their Umi, which is nice. Huh. Don't really know what Valence does, though, honestly. Maybe someone can explain it to me one of these days. But the thing is, let's search Umi, alright? So, they have Electric Jellyfish, which for no real cost is a hard once per turn negate on either a spell or a monster. So even if you were playing like Marincess or whatever, you still have to deal with this negate, which is annoying. But, like, if it just had the monster negate, it wouldn't be that bad. The really bad part is this random, for no purpose or no reason at all, this spell negate. So even if you have a Duster, it doesn't work. And even if they don't have the jellyfish, they actually have another option. They don't necessarily need to use the jellyfish. They have the option of, let me find it real quick. Oh, here we go. Sea Stealth Attack. Banish a water monster, any water monster you control until end phase. This turn, face-up spell traps you control cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, even if this card leaves the field. So, see stealth attack here, prevents any of your back row. The face-up ones, I guess. Also known as all the floodgates. They can not be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. So, you need non-destruction. And then you also need some way to deal with the jellyfish. And then, like, if you can't do that, you still have to deal with, like, Umi. And then you have to deal with Kairyu-shin. And, of course, just because see stealth attack is a card, this has this obnoxious effect, honestly, to activate Umi from the graveyard, and then to give it protection, and then this not hard once per turn. At the start of the damage step, if your water monster whose original level is 5 or higher battles an opponent's monster, destroy that opponent's monster effect. So you can't really destroy the Kairyu-shin by battle, realistically. And you can't destroy the jellyfish by battle either, because they'll just banish it and bring it back and then phase with C stealth attack. Which is hella annoying. So your extra deck cannot be, like, the answer to the out. Well, they can't out or be the answer. Well, I guess you can't have the answer in your extra deck to these floodgates, which is even more annoying. And this goes, like, for so many of these floodgates. They have these random extra things on them for no reason, which they shouldn't have. Like, El Shaddai Winda has, for no reason, just innate card destruction protection, or whatever. Or, it's protected from destruction via card effect. Like, that's also annoying. So all these, like, floodgate decks just have protection, and all they need to do is basically open, like, even if they're not doing this kind of thing, they still have the option of, like, just running, like, it was worse before when these were at, like, 3 and 2, right? So even worse than this is, like, they can have Lord of the Heavenly Prison, right? And this just protects all their back row, so you can't really get rid of it. And then on top of that, they have for, like, so, like, you can't just lightning storm them, I guess. So lightning storm being at 3 and Duster being at 1 already, you'd have to get fairly lucky to open, like, a 1 of Duster. But then after that, like, next step, part 2, you would need to open probably some way to deal with, unironically, Solemn Judgment, because Solemn Judgment is going to be just run at 3. What? Did I spell something wrong? Let's see. Solemn Judgment. I guess I spelled Judgment wrong. Must be tired. But whatever. Solemn Judgment just negates a spell trap card. And then, like, let's say you run Red Reboot for Floodgates, right? Well, I'm sorry to say, but this actually isn't good enough, because as we saw earlier, we had, like, Kairyu-shin, Winda, and those are actually monster-based floodgates. Inspector Border as well. Red Reboot does nothing against them. But I guess if you have the out, like an evenly matched or, like, a Duster or something, this helps you a little bit, like, against, like, the Solemn, I guess. The Border, you can't really do much against the Border. I guess there is another, like, since they're monsters, at least you can negate them with, like, Impermanence, or, like, a Forbidden Droplet, which, if you happen to draw these when you need them, great. But if you notice the issue, like, the big issue here is that, like, 90% of your deck doesn't get to interact, and it's simply you draw the out or you didn't, and that's the entire game. That's what you gotta hate about Floodgates. It kind of just, there's no gameplay when, well, I don't feel like it's gameplay, at least, when you're playing against Floodgates or you're playing Floodgates. And of course, like, the notable thing about, like, some of these floodgates is that they actually act as board breakers as well, which is obnoxious. Kairyu-shin is like the one of the most disgusting ones. The reason being, this is a continuous effect, and this does not start a chain. So on normal summon of Kairyu-shin, they can completely like wipe your board down to one monster, and that's obnoxious. Yeah. And then they can just have the C stealth attack, and then you can't attack over Kairyu-shin, and you lose. Fun. So that this has some going second potential randomly. Great. Pain. And of course, like, cards like Rivalry, Gozen, Tikaboo, whatever. If you, of course, if you don't control only one type of monster, you have to send all other face-up monsters you control to the graveyard. And this is actually, I believe, does this count as an effect? Like, I don't think this triggers like a send to graveyard effect. If it's by effect, I'm not sure actually. It doesn't really come up often, so would have to research that a bit more, I suppose. But I mean, it'd be really awkward if that actually happened. But I guess the worst one is like a Tikaboo. Your opponent flips a Tikaboo, and then they flip a skill drain, so you can't negate the Tikaboo, and then you have to send all your monsters to the graveyard. And then, like, they stun you out of playing the game, basically. So you just don't get to play, and that's basically all there is to it. But there are some other decks that, like, for example, well, with their floodgates, like All Shut All Window, the Barrier Statues, Inspector Border, those are literally only effective going first, so they're just completely cheesing you, basically. Because you can't reasonably always, like, put in the outs for these cards, and they're not, like, super generic. There's some cards you can just, like, open and do well with, like, Imperm does, like, okay, but then, like, with the case of Inspector Border, you know they're also rocking Tikaboo, Skill Drain, Rivalry, Gozen, whatever. Summon Limit, Anti-Spell. They're running, like, every single floodgate they can get their hands on. And speaking of which, in those cases, you can't even, like, get rid of their floodgates. Because Anti-Spell is a card. Well, I mean, like, Droplet kind of works, but eh. In general, you're not doing too well. So you simply have to draw the out. You don't draw the out, you don't get to play. That's where we're at, I guess, right now. And for the list that can't really even do anything against you, because they just automatically lose going second because they have to just hard commit to all their stun cards. They can't fit any going second cards, like Inspector Border Stun. Completely irritating to lose to. So it comes down to, like, complete luck. There's no gameplay. Neither player is really playing the game here. It's just horrendous. I don't even understand why, like, Inspector Border is still at 3 because of that. Like, this is even worse than getting hit by, like, a Colossus. It's that bad. And, of course, I hope you guys are looking forward to Kishtira. So, as you can see, Kishtira is not in the game as of me recording this video. But, yeah. If you guys don't know, Arise Heart is basically just Macrocosmos. So, this lovely card. Yeah, a lot of decks can't play with Macrocosmos up on the field. Even, like, Pendulum suffers, if you guys didn't know. Instead of their cards going to the extra deck, they get banished. Yeah, I don't know why that ruling works like that. I believe it shouldn't work like that, because Pens deserve better. Because at least let us play something, you know, under Macro. Getting floodgated out by Macro, not really fun either. So, of course, this is one of the floodgates of all time, but Shifter as well, pretty bad floodgate. this is basically just Macrocosmos for 2 turns, but this is a quick effect that can be used on the first turn of your opponent's turn. So going second, really irritating. And then this can also affect turns like 2 and 3 or later, depending on how it goes, I guess. You can totally play this with like this kind of stun as well, of course. Which is irritating because after this, after this resolves, there's nothing you can really do about it. It's all like, I guess, go through Dimension Shifter activating on the first turn and the second turn. Of course, if Dimension Shifter activates on the first turn, and it is your opponent's turn, well, I guess it would be mostly on the first turn, but the difference would be whether your opponent's activating it on their turn or your turn. So, on your opponent's turn, there's like literally one card. You have Cypher Gamma. I don't think there's like another card in the game that can stop Dimension Shifter on your opponent's turn, because you'll still get macroed on your turn if you do not negate it, so rough. And then following this, that you have like Called by the Grave. And then like Crossout Designator, which is not reasonable to play, because you would also have to be running Dimension Shifter. And since you're playing Crossout for it, it can be assumed that you can't play under Shifter. So there's literally no reason to run it. But anyways, so you have 2 of Called By, and then 2 of Gamma if you're running it at all, to stop Shifter. Otherwise, you have 2 of Gamma, and that is your only hope. More or less. So, completely rough, and completely horrendous. Not much you can do against a Shifter. If it resolves, I guess your opponent just simply drew, like, they just more or less opened Exodia, and you didn't have the counterplay to it. I guess that's a way of looking at it, which is not really fun. It is nice when, like, your cards do get a chance to interact with your opponents. Like, for example, if I was playing Punk, just for example, oh, not that kind of Punk. So, you have your, like, Wagons and your Z-Almonds and whatnot, right? So, if my opponent targets, like, a monster to negate it or whatever, I can draw a card and stuff, right? I have all these effects. The effect to special summon, paying LP to draw a card, and then I draw a card when I pay the LP, right? All this stuff, and then I have my extra deck monsters. I have my, like, Amazing Dragon that can return cards to my opponent's hand when I special summon it, based on how many Psychic Tuners, actually not Psychic Tuners, Psychic level 3s I think it was actually, right? Yeah, Psychic level 3s with different names. I can bounce that many cards to my opponent's hand. But then with Floodgates, you realize, oh, I can't, like, literally every single card here, I can't do, like, anything with them. Like, literally nothing. The entire deck rendered useless, so real quick, let's cut these. I guess we'll keep this in for now. But we'll cut these, so we'll go like 3 of these, 3 of these, 1 of these, 1 of these, 2 of these, 1 of these, and then let's go 3 of these, about 2 of these, 1 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 of these. And then we have like somewhat of a Punk engine, and then we have our emergency teleport, and then I'll put in some hand traps as well. So we have our Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. And then we have, let's just go with Ghost Bell, Gamma, and then let's go like Driver. And we won't worry about the extra deck too much, we'll just focus on the main deck for now. And then let's see what we have. We can run a few like small kind and just for the fun of it. Let's go like Therion. So we go 1 here, 1 here, 1 of these, 1 of these, and then let's go 1 of these is fine. One of these is okay as well. And one of these. Because, like, why not? And I did not put in Called by the Grave. So let's tune this up a little bit for this. And then, let's see. Actually, with how deck list is, do we want that? Maybe not, actually. Maybe we can't go too heavily into the... So, yeah. Maybe we cut Therion, actually, and go for something else with how I'm running this. Unless I want to go over 40, which is technically fine. But, let's see. What's fine? I guess... we can go, throw in, like, Orcust. For now. Whatever's fine. Actually, is Orcust that good? Not really. Not like this. So, a bit of a struggle, but I guess we'll go back to Therion for now. Just put in the minimum package, like something like this, I guess. And then this... 41, sure. Doesn't really matter, but let's real quick look over which cards will be relevant. Keeping in mind, like, let's assume we're going second and we're facing stun, alright? So our opponent normal summons Inspector Border. The most they might do is activate, like, a Pot of Duality, Extrav, whatever, and that's all we can Ash if we open Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. So, if they open something like that, cool. We're down a card. They're also down a card. We traded one card, 1-for-1. So they still have 4 or 5 cards in their hand, depending on if they still have, like, a different way to draw, like a Desires or whatever. If they do, then they do, I guess. Not much you can do about that. So then they will normal summon Inspector Border, and then here, let's look real quick and see what cards we have that can out Inspector Border. Okay. So, all of these punk cards, they do nothing now. Can't even activate my effects. Dear note, I can't activate this, so I cannot special summon it. These aren't inherent summons. None of my cards are inherent summons. So then we have Foxy Tune here. This doesn't out it either. Inherent summon once again. The most I can do is just set a card and pass, basically. And then let's go ahead and look here. Ogre Dance. I can't activate Ogre Dance's effects either. All of these are dead cards. All of these spells don't do anything. Even if we get their back row, we have no way to out Inspector Border in this list. We are completely screwed. And if we maybe go for, instead of Gamos, we have an out then. And we can imperm the Inspector Border. Okay, very cool. So let's also instead, I guess, put in copies of Impermanence. Now we have 3 copies of Impermanence. Yay. Keeping in mind, now this is the exact only card that we have that can out Inspector Border. So let's say we're against Inspector Border again this time. Now we activate Infinite Impermanence. Our opponent activates one of their ways to protect the Inspector Border's, like, Floodgatey effect to stop us from playing the game. That, or they flip a different Floodgate. Now we need to simply have Harpy's Feather Duster or Evenly Matched in our hand. Keeping in mind, all of our cards, like, from here to, like, here, well, even, like, from, like, here to here, basically. Actually, no. From here to, like, here. So, like, 20 cards? 30 cards? How many cards is that? Like, something like that. I do not get to play any of these at all because of these fun interactive floodgates. And I'm just using the Inspector Border example, but it's even worse for some other decks in some other situations, and overall it just makes the game uninteractive and unfun, and there's just no gameplay going on between, like, 2 people here, right? And of course, you do need to run these hand traps against other decks to stop them from, like, running you over with, like, lack of interaction because of how much advantage you build up in a combo in Yu-Gi-Oh! Nowadays. Worst defender, I guess I can show you guys, is Tearlaments. So let's say we normal summon Rhino Heart, and let's assume for the 4 cards in our hand, aside from Rhino, completely dead. They are nothing. So then send Merly, and then you go ahead and then fusion summon Kick Kalos, adding Merly, special summon Merly, send Kick Kalos, and then you do the mill 8 here, and then you just hit Insane, and then now you have Salik, Crime, Rukelos, and let's say you milled really crazy, so you also milled like, well, the King of the Swamps or whatever, so now you also have the Predap monster, and then you also hit some millers, and your opponent is playing, let's say, a deck like this, so you don't super benefit off of the mills, I guess. There aren't that many cards that benefit off of mills here. I mean, somewhat, but it doesn't make that much of a difference here. So let's assume that happens, of course. Then you have to still contest Crime negate, Salik negate, and then you have to contest Rukelos, and then you have to, let's say, I guess you wouldn't have to contest with Perlarino, but then you have to contest with like 4, I guess, 4 immediately obvious interactions. And then after this, they have more follow-up, and of course they have the shufflers in their graveyard as well. And really bad if you lost a key part of your combo in this case as well. But either way, they have like maybe 4 to 5 pieces of interaction for you. And of course, the cards that in the hand that did nothing, well, they only did nothing during the first turn. They were hand traps. Alright, so Maxi, Ash Blossom, and Joy Spring as well. You have to contest with those as well, because it's pretty likely that's what they had in their hand that they couldn't use. Best case scenario, I guess they had 3 triple tactic talents and you don't have to worry about it till like turn 3. But they already high rolled, so now you have to make something that there's not like there's probably a very low chance of you being able to like break their board and win on the same turn at this point, because they have like Crime, Salik, and then they have like Rukelos and other stuff. And at this point, they could have as well also milled like another Salik to add like a Havness to the hand to go even harder, or they can just add a whatever card, it doesn't really matter. And then they can just like send a like Happiness from their hand off of like the Rukelos negate when they negate you inevitably hit you with the Rukelos negate. And of course, like, assuming you didn't get any of the insane going second cards you would need against here, like, I guess evenly matched if they didn't have Crime, they will likely have interaction for like every single card nearly in your hand, to the point where you can't do much with what you're left with. So that's pain. So of course there's no way you can put in all of the cards that you need to go against stun and still deal with this stuff, which is really, really annoying, to say the least. So it puts the game state in a really, like the current game state, I would say, for Master Tool is really, really annoying and really bad. I hate it. You kind of have to win the coin flip. That's kind of where it's at. Like, unironically, the best strategy, well, you could argue, is just to not bother playing, like, any of the hard-going second cards and only play cards that can go first. So, like, Imperm, you might not even want to run because of that. Like, Ghost Bell. Does this do anything for you? Kinda. But, like, even for going first, I think there's, like, you're better off still considering maybe, like, Bistjuls. Bistjuls are not bad. They don't work as well as Ghost Bell on the first turn. as it happens. So maybe something else, maybe not. Depends, I suppose. Called by the Graves and stuff. Cut Duster. Don't need that if we're going only playing to go first. And then you make a completely, well, yeah, AIDS board. There's no real other way to put it. And if we draw these, we going second, then that's nice, but we're mostly running this for Maxi. In case of two elements, they can just add Salik off of Kit Kalos, which is fun, isn't it? And then just pass on that, and you basically only upstarted. Well, that aside. Now we have more room, a lot more room, I guess, for going first cards, and it becomes more fun. So, to give our opponents the least likely chance of winning, let's do a bit of this, I suppose. And then we throw in floodgates that we can run. Like, let's pretend my end board ends on one attribute. Which, it doesn't. But let's assume it does. Alright, let's throw in a Gozen. Because, of course, Gozen. And then let's assume... Oh, my board also ends on just the same type of monster. Throw in a rivalry. If I draw these, awesome. And then that's it. You better have the outs to, like, my 3 Solemn Judgments and my, like, 3 Solemn Strikes in my Rivalry of Warlords and Gozen match at the same time. And my actual end board. This is basically the same kind of energy that Stun gives off, but now we're playing a combo deck instead. Which is still... well, this is ironically still more interactive. Because, like, if we do a combo, our opponent can drop, like, an Ash Blossom or Maxi on us or something. Like, even if it doesn't resolve, they can at least activate something and it'll do something. Like, with Stun, you're just setting cards and then you're hoping for that. That's kind of where it's at with all the... like, the state of Master Duel is just... meh. Oh, and... there's also this floating around. It's not, like, super played, but it's just annoying. There's just this Blackwing's FTK. Might as well mention it as well. So Blackwing Assault Dragon, they make Mud Dragon, and then they also this Mud Dragon actually, and then they make specifically what was it? They make Mirror Jade, and then they also use this to search a certain card, and they use this to give you Beals, I believe. So this one, Beals of the Diabolic Dragons. And then they also activate Nathung's effect to target Beals, and then this just starts like an infinite loop, chaining between Beals and Blackwing Assault Dragon to like more or less FTK you. It's not like a legit FTK. Like, they're legit FTKs, like the Bishbalkan stuff. If you know, you know. But yeah, basically, I think at this rate we're going, in the direction we're going, I guess, actually. For Master Duel, we're going to start leaning towards the point where we don't care about going second, and it's just going to be no interaction, and we're just going to be, like, throwing down obnoxious boards, and then, like, you're going second, alright, guess you can't play. And then you're also going to be that person that's doing this kind of thing, right, to your opponent, and then they can't play, so it's like, going second, there's really not much to do. It's just going to be pretty unfun if we keep going in this direction, I suppose, but at least we have taken a few right steps a while ago. Gozen and such being at 1. So we've been seeing a good amount less stun. The amount of stun there was before, like, during certain parts of Master Duel's lifespan was really bad. And the worst was when, at the start of Master Duel, when this guy was more or less the meta and you just run a bunch of floodgates. And that was it. It was basically like better stun. Really obnoxious overall, though. And not a whole lot you can do about this stuff. Like, I don't know. A lot of these random cards are still at 3, though. So, the ones that I think are pretty obnoxious, of course, are the barrier statues. They have banned one of the barrier statues, being the Storm Winds, which Fluandries was just summoning in their combo. Which is... yeah, it's just obnoxious, really. But the good thing is that Fluandries didn't have the capacity to run protection for it. So, like, they couldn't solemn you, or, like, in the case of Kairyu-shin, negate your, like, Raigeki, which Kairyu-shin can do. Kairyu-shin stun. Haha, Umi stun. Umi control, Umi stun. Which one is it? Anyway, and then there is Fossil Dyna. This card, still at 3. Just today, though, about half my games I got completely stunned and floodgated out of being able to play at all. I simply did not draw that out. Guess I should have played better. So, yeah. That kind of gameplay, completely uninteractive, unfun. And this is a best of 1. Like, are you kidding me? Like, can I at least play a game against my opponent? That's kind of all I really want. Gameplay, I guess, you know? I kinda wanna see, like, interaction between cards. There's some interactions between cards you guys might not know, you might know. Like, I mentioned this in a previous video, but if I, for example, activate Subterra Guru and then chain Subterra Final Battle as chain 3 to my opponent negating Guru, if their negate is actually a activated a negate activation, then Final Battle does not work and Guru does not resolve. Even worse yet is if they did it with, like, Baron de Fleur notably, instead of, like, a Borlode Savage Dragon, it would negate destroy my Guru still. And that moderately sucks for me, I guess, but it is what it is, and learning interactions like that is part of the journey, you know, to improving. It's kind of part of the game. There are a lot of jank interactions like that that you really have to learn. Just for example, let's go to Mech Knights now. I don't know if I showed this in a video, but let's go ahead and look at World Legacy's secret. So, when this card is activated, you target one level 5 or higher monster in your graveyard. Special summon it. When this card leaves the field, destroy that monster. Negate any opponent's monster effect that activates in the same column as a Mech Knight monster you control. So even if you tribute a monster or move it, like, the activation location is still the same. So Mech Knight Indigo Eclipse will still be able to negate my opponent's card. So, like, let's say, for example, my opponent activates Forbidden Droplet, and I have my secrets as well. So let's assume I have, like, a monster on the field, of course, for my opponent to Forbidden Droplet. Doesn't really matter what it is in this case, so we go chain 1 my opponent's monster effect, chain, like, 2 secrets, chain 3 Droplet. And then, on resolution, I can still summon my Mech Knight. It doesn't matter which Mech Knight. Let's say I summon Red into that column. And then my opponent's effect on Chain 1 would not resolve and would instead be negated by World Legacy's secret. Which is pretty cool. And just real quick, let me read this. To negate any opponent's trap effect that activates in the same column as a Mech Knight monster you control. Yeah, this doesn't work against floodgates, does it? This negates effect and not activation. Well, that's good to know, I guess. But yeah, overall, pretty annoying stuff. And that's kind of just how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is right now. Not much we can do about it. And in some regards, this is like worse than the start of the game, because even with like the Outblik stuff, I guess they specifically had Imperial Order, but aside from Imperial Order, which is a one of card, that of course still feels bad to lose to, they didn't have much way to protect their back row. So if you just drop multiple Lightning Storms on them, you were Gucci, you know? You were completely good. And you're just doing fine. But with like Lord of the Heavenly Prison and like all these new cards that protect the back row, and honestly what feels like to be pretty unfair, because Kairyu-Shin specifically, it works alongside well, it's part of the deck, right? And it's part of setting up the Floodgate even, which is really obnoxious in my opinion. Doesn't really matter how it's done, it's just obnoxious to play against. Not fun to play against. I don't know if you guys consider it fun to play or not, but it's just pain in general. So that's all I've got for you guys today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Maybe we'll talk about how we can deal with these floodgates potentially, just in theory. I can't really do anything about it myself, you know? So, yeah, I'll see you guys later. Bye.